important to them, and they are starting to express that now. So we're also starting to hear more questions about, are the Republicans who helped kick this off by saying they would object to this count still planning on doing that? And it's a little bit hard to get answers because everyone is separated from their bosses. There is so much confusion. But again, it does seem like the plan here is to try to go forward. I know there was a brief discussion about trying to evacuate senators from the location where they are using buses. That plan seems to be on hold for the moment. One of our producers saw microphones going into the secure location where the senators are, as though they may be setting up for something where they would be able to talk to reporters that would involve, because again, remember, this debate is supposed to be public as well, and that is an incredibly important feature of the way our government works. And I think that there is also a desire on the part of members of Congress to be seen carrying out their jobs, to demonstrate to the American people that this is what they need to do. And the other thing, Savannah, that I would just add, we're asking for reaction to the president's video. The problem with the president's video, based on some of the people that I have spoken with, is that he doesn't repudiate the basic reality that Joe Biden won the election. Instead, he gives additional credence to what these protesters are here saying has happened. And while he did say that they should leave the building, he did not in any way condemn the message of the disingenuous false message that has prompted them to show up here in the first place. So I think there's some concern among members of Congress that what he did doesn't help the situation, as many of them have been calling for, but instead will potentially make it worse. Savannah.
Exactly, and that was the reaction, the fast reaction of Congresswoman Liz Cheney, that it doesn't go far enough if you on the one hand say go home, but at the same time you're pouring fuel on the flames by saying that you were robbed, it was stolen, the election was stolen, and that it was fraudulent. That is not what many Republicans have asked the president to do at this moment of crisis in our country. They've asked him to be clear and unequivocal that it's time for the peaceful transition to a new president, as our Constitution and our democracy requires. Let me get to Ellison Barber. She's our correspondent. She's in Washington. I believe she's outside the Capitol. Yeah, hi, Ellison. Ellison, what have you been hearing?
Hey, Savannah, yes, so we've been watching just in the last little bit here as we've seen police on this opposite side of the Capitol start to use more tear gas on the crowd that is gathered over there. Not tear gas, we believe it. It seems to be some sort of mace or pepper spray that they're using on the crowd there. We had been told that some of those protesters were possibly breaking windows, and that's what led to the use of that pepper spray. You can see right over here, we're starting now to see Capitol Police gathering here. They seem to be huddling, discussing, possibly getting ready for something. But all evening since we saw those barricades first come down as protesters rushed to the front of the Capitol, Capitol Police have largely kind of stood back. They have, we've seen them kind of waiting up on different parts of the steps there as the protesters made their way up closer. You can see people standing on an armored vehicle here holding flags, the American flag upside down, a Trump 2020 flag just underneath it. About 10 minutes ago, we were up closer to those stairs and somebody came on a bullhorn, a protester, saying that President Trump says that we should go home. He wants you to go home. Other people in the crowd pushed back on that person, and he said, I know, I understand you want to be here, but he's saying that we should go home. Another person then got on top of that armored vehicle and started yelling at people through the bullhorn to come back. So for now, it seems like there is still a large group of people here who do not have any plans to leave in the immediate upcoming future. I mean, this group, it is not as big as it was a couple of hours ago, but there are still people on these steps who seem to have no plans to leave anytime soon. People that we have seen come out claiming to have been inside the U.S. Capitol. They are greeted kind of as heroes by the crowd here when they come out and they talk about their experience inside. And we saw some people actually following, kind of tracking closely behind a few police in riot gear, calling them traitors for whatever happened inside the U.S. Capitol and berating them as they made their way across the front here. Savannah.
Alice and Barbara, correspondent on the ground. They're outside the Capitol. I want to go to a news conference underway now. Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., who's called the 6 o'clock curfew to the Capitol, so let's listen in.
This afternoon, I announced a citywide curfew for the District of Columbia beginning at 6 p.m. this evening, going until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. During the curfew, no one is allowed to be outside in public places other than essential workers, which includes credentialed media engaging in essential functions. As you can see from video images, the unlawful behavior inside the United States Capitol building. I continue to urge all Washingtonians to stay home and stay calm. And if you see something, say something. But above all, stay home. The behavior that we are witnessing is shameful, unpatriotic, and above all, it is unlawful. Anyone who has engaged in these activities, continues to engage in these activities, will be held accountable. There will be law and order, and this behavior will not be tolerated. The Metropolitan Police Department has been deployed to assist the United States Capitol Police in restoring order to the Capitol, and our Chief of Police will lead the command to clear the Capitol building and establish a perimeter around the Capitol. I have requested both the Virginia State Police and the Maryland State Police to deploy officers, and they have engaged immediately to deploy officers to the Metropolitan Police Department to help regain control of the United States Capitol. I have also invoked several days ago a standing mutual aid agreement with our surrounding jurisdictions, and I want to thank them for deploying. Those jurisdictions include Arlington County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, as well as Baltimore City. We want to thank them for sending their officers in assisting us with public safety in the district, as well as the response to the United States Capitol building. Additionally, I want to acknowledge and thank the New Jersey State Police, who will also be assisting the Metropolitan Police Department. So with that, I want to turn to Chief Conte for a situational update. Secretary of the Army will make comments, and we will take brief questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor Bowser. My name is Robert J. Conte III. I am the Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, D.C. As you are aware, demonstrators came to our city this morning to exercise their First Amendment rights and were largely concentrated in the area of the National Mall. Following the President's remarks, a large crowd began to march eastbound on Madison Avenue Northwest and Constitution Avenue Northwest. As the demonstrators approached the United States Capitol grounds, there was a noticeable change in their demeanor. They breached the fencing along the U.S. Capitol grounds and confronted police lines surrounding the building. MPD was requested by the United States Capitol Police to provide assistance with crowd management, and due to the violent behavior towards the police officers there and their intent on gaining access to the Capitol, a riot was declared. It was clear that the crowd was intent on causing harm to our officers by deploying chemical irritants on police to force entry into the United States Capitol building. As you are aware, they were able to gain access to the Capitol building, and I can confirm that one civilian was reported to have sustained a gunshot wound inside of the Capitol. Details of the shooting are not immediately available, and the situation remains under investigation. The Metropolitan Police Department will be taking the lead on that investigation. MPD continues to provide personnel resources and assistance on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol and has requested the assistance of law enforcement partners through a previously in place mutual aid agreement. As you heard from the mayor, a 6 p.m. curfew has been put in place tonight and will be in effect until 6 a.m. tomorrow, January 7th. We are advising everyone that is not engaged in essential activity to get off the streets and adhere to the curfew. If you are found to be in violation of the curfew, police will be required to take action. Again, I want to reiterate and make it clear, please abide by the curfew that the mayor has set in place, or people will be subject to arrest. Lastly, I know that many of you are familiar with the Metropolitan Police Department. Understand that there is no better agency in the country to handle First Amendment events. They happen on a regular basis here in our city. However, today's events were not representation of peaceful protests. Today, what we witnessed was unlawful, riotous behavior. And people that come to our city engaged in unlawful behavior will be held accountable. We can take any questions that you may have after the Secretary has a chance to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, Chief Conte. At around 3 o'clock this afternoon, we mobilized the D.C. National Guard to 100% strength. We'll have 1,100 personnel that are convening to the Armory as we speak to support Metro PD and reestablishing the safety and the confines of the U.S. Capitol. We'll also be working with other federal law enforcement entities that are going to be coming here to the Metropolitan Police Station to add additional support and capability as they continue deliberate planning and look into how a clearing operation will be conducted. Thank you.
And how does this work? This phone? Okay.
Evan from Fox 5. Mayor will to repeat the question.
Okay.
Evan, do you want to say his name?
Evan?
Yeah, hi Mayor and Chief Conte. Could you please speak to the confusion surrounding the deployment of the National Guard? We understand that the council put out a statement saying that originally the Department of Defense
We've been listening into a news conference from the mayor of Washington, D.C. and several officials, including the head of the Metropolitan Police Department, and with their plans on how to get this under control. The National Guard in D.C. has been activated, as we just learned. The Metropolitan Police Chief was very clear that what had started as lawful demonstrations quickly escalated as a group of protesters came close to the Capitol. He said that violent behavior toward police unfolded, including the firing of the irritants, some kind of irritants toward police, which allowed them to breach the fence and the police line. And according to the chief of police, a riot was declared. He said this town is very used to people coming and protesting and exercising their First Amendment rights. This was not that. This was a riot, according to Metropolitan Police. And we're learning a bit more now about the plans to get this under control. It involves National Guard, it involves FBI, it involves the Metropolitan Police Department, it involves the Capitol Police. We've heard word of the Virginia National Guard being called in, or at least requested. We'll see if we start to see some of that personnel. Let me turn to Janet Napolitano for purposes of the discussion here, former Homeland Security Secretary in the Obama administration. And Secretary Napolitano, first of all, just your thoughts. I mean, you aren't near Washington, I don't think, or not in the Capitol, but when you see these images and what has unfolded today, as a former Homeland Security official whose job was to protect the homeland, what do you think?
Oh, it's a dark day for our country. And, you know, when I was Secretary of Homeland Security, we did all kinds of scenario planning for attacks on the homeland. But this is akin to an attack from inside the homeland on the functions of our democracy, on our government. Like I said, it is a dark day.
I mean, when you see that the Senate and the House have to be evacuated, that the session has to be stopped, it is an extraordinary moment. And I, of course, don't want to ask for any inside information, but if you could help us as the former Homeland Security understand, you know, what kind of planning is underway for this kind of situation. Perhaps this couldn't be imagined, where American citizens, our own people, would storm the Capitol and put in danger members of the United States Congress and their staffs. But certainly an attack on the Capitol is something you would have had to contemplate in your past job.
Certainly, and there are procedures in place for what's called continuity of government to secure the members of the House and the Senate should there be an attack. These were procedures developed in the wake of the attacks of 9/11, as a matter of fact. You know, it's interesting to me, however, and there'll be after-action reports on this up the wazoo, but it was very foreseeable that there was going to be tremendous protest activity in Washington today, incited by the president himself. and one has to question what kind of pre-event planning went on. Certainly the presence of law enforcement now is arriving, and they're absolutely essential, and we absolutely need them. But I'm just comparing it to the way law enforcement handled the event at Lafayette Park last spring when the president dispersed peaceful protesters to go do his photo op at the church, holding the Bible. It's a pretty stark contrast, and I think it illustrates a lot about the current administration.
What did you think of the president's remarks? Was that sufficient in your mind to quell the violence, to calm it, to call it off, and to try to get this under control?
No. The president lost this election. That result has been confirmed by every court that has considered the dozens of challenges. The electors have been selected. The votes have been certified by the states. By the way, it's the states who run elections, and it's the states who certify electors. The purpose of today's convening of the joint chambers is almost ceremonial in nature. It's to receive those certified votes, to open the envelopes, and to count them. That's it. It's not a place of objection or allegations of fraud. That's the courts of the United States, and the courts have ruled. So this is over. And what the president should have done is to say that he respects the rule of law, he respects our processes, he respects that on January 20th, Joe Biden will take office as the president of the United States, and these protesters, and I'm almost reluctant to call them protesters. It's really a mob. But they should disperse and go home. And by the way, those who have committed acts of violence, broken windows, etc., they should be identified and prosecuted.
Well, the head of the Metropolitan Police Department in D.C. called them rioters. Secretary Napolitano, thank you for being with us. Yeah, it does seem in the case of those who breached the line and trespassed into the United States Congress, where the public is not allowed. Yeah, that seems an apt description. Thank you, Secretary. I want to say that we've been watching this image on the Capitol grounds, and it does look like some people are being escorted out now by law enforcement. And I want to go to Ellison Barber, who's there. What are you seeing? What's your vantage point?